Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku joined the League of Villains. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Izuku walked along slowly to the sports festival, seeing as he had plenty of time before it started. He wore a black hoodie, trousers and combat boots. He also wore a black face mask to cover his face and red contact lenses, so he wouldn't be recognized. Sometimes when he went out, he would see his mother out searching for him. Whenever he did see her, he always felt a strong sense of guilt for leaving her without an explanation. Occasionally, he got the urge to walk over to her and come back home, but always held it back after remembering why he left in the first place. That home of his was part of the very society that rejected him, and he didn't belong there, not anymore. Besides, Inko was safer without him in her life, though he imagined she must be very lonely, since his father went off to work in some other country for reasons when he was a child, and had not been heard from since. Pull yourself together. You've got a mission to do, he thought. 2 nights ago, he was given a mission by Sensei to attend the UA Sports Festival, and analyze the quirks of the students participating. According to Sensei, they were likely to become future enemies of the League, so it was best to have knowledge on their abilities beforehand, although, Izuku had a feeling they were looking for potential members, or at least worthy quirks for Sensei to steal. Izuku was surprised when he learned what Sensei's quirk was because he had never heard of someone being able to give others quirks before. He was only told about it because he needed to explain about All Might's quirk, which came from him. He didn't go into much detail about it because it would involve explaining his past. Izuku continued to the festival with his backpack full of notebooks, 7 to be precise. He was going to be recording like crazy. UA's staff room. All Might was sitting alone getting ready for the festival. He would be expected to make an appearance towards the end to present the medals to the victors. This would also be a good chance to look for a successor. However, his mind was focused on another matter. He had spoken to Naomasa about seeing the list of quirkless people who had promised that he would be able to see it. Surprisingly, the government didn't place much security around or care who looked at it, which All Might found strange. Naomasa would be coming next week to talk with him as he still had a lot of work to do. Knowing how busy his job was, All Might didn't mind. While he didn't want to believe it, he had to consider the possibility that the boy he'd met nearly a year ago was Deku. If he was, then it was possible that the boy's dark transformation was his doing, meaning he would need to be the one to fix it. However, despite his assault on Bakugo, Deku had displayed certain qualities of a hero. That meant that there was still hope. I will find out the truth, he swore. If you are Deku, then I will stop you, and I will save you. The UA Sports Festival stands several hours later. Izuku had been recording what he saw like mad. Throughout the first and second rounds, he watched as each of the competitors used their quirks and recorded them for analysis. Thanks to the monitors, he was able to keep up. It was the rounds of combat that he watched intently. The competitors that had made it that far were the most skilled and dangerous. Most of the 1A group, not surprisingly Katsuki included, made it to this round. Izuku knew each of them, of course. He had looked at the list from the USJ enough to remember their faces. Some however stood out more than others. Shoto Todoroki was the son of the infamous hero Endeavor, and possessed a quirk that allowed him to manipulate ice. Although from what Izuku had seen he clearly had inherited his father's quirk as well, though he appeared reluctant, more like repulsed, to use it, though he didn't know why. The other was Tenya Ida. Izuku recognized his family name as the one who embodied the Turbo Hero Ingenium. His quirk only added further proof. As the battles progressed, Izuku recorded everything he saw, how people used their quirks and their battle styles. He watched Bakugo's first fight with the Chako Uraraka, who he recognized as the girl he rescued. Kaken's as violent as ever, I see, he thought grimly. He watched as the girl tried to fight back with her anti-gravity quirk, but was ultimately defeated. Seeing the state she was in, Izuku couldn't help but feel sympathy for her, as it was the same state he'd been in many times. The battles went on and on until it was Bakugo versus Todoroki. At first, Todoroki seemed to have the upper hand with his ice quirk, but Katsuki managed to utilize his in a way to win him the match. For some reason, Katsuki was not happy with his victory, and started shouting at an unconscious Todoroki. Before things could escalate, Midnight rendered the explosion user unconscious with her quirk. Izuku was going to leave at the presentation of medals when he noticed the position Katsuki was in. He was chained to the champion's podium where he was struggling violently to get himself free. In Izuku's mind, he looked like he was about to go on a murderous rampage. Unable to restrain himself, Izuku started laughing at his former tormentor's situation. He also took note that Iida was not there despite having qualified for 3rd place also. Then All Might arrived with a big entrance and catching the audience's attention and awe. Izuku however felt nothing but contempt towards the symbol of peace. This had all stemmed from when he learned about his quirk. Flashback. Pass on. What do you mean by that? Izuku asked, confused. Do you mean by bloodline? That would be the logical idea, Sensei replied. But no. I mean it's passed on from person to person through DNA. Izuku was very surprised. He had never heard of anything like this before. The quirk originally came from me when I gave it to someone. That person however stood against me and passed it on to a successor to fight against me. The process has continued for several generations. As to why it came from me, well, my quirk allows me to take and give quirks to and from others, Sensei explained. Why are you telling me this? And several generations? Izuku asked, more confused. He couldn't understand why Sensei would just trust him with this sort of information. Considering everything you've done for the League, I think you've earned the right to know. Besides, the others know as well, so there's no point in keeping it from you, he told the boy. And as for the generations part, well, I simply stole a quirk that prevented me from aging. As Izuku processed all this information, he decided to accept what he was hearing as the truth. Normally he would look for more evidence to see if this were the truth, however, knowing Sensei, he wouldn't joke about something of this scale. Then another thought came to mind. What is All Might's quirk exactly? You called it One for All, Izuku questioned. It's a quirk that stockpiles power, granting the user large boosts in strength, speed and agility, the older man explained. If he inherited that quirk, then what happened to his old one? Izuku asked curiously. He had not heard of All Might doing anything other than what Sensei described, so it was either he'd lost it or just hadn't shown it yet. Nothing, he stated. The quirk wouldn't be affected by getting a new one. You see, Izuku, he used to be like you. He was quirkless. Flashback end. Izuku had been furious when he found out. That bastard, he thought. Looking down on me for being quirkless when he used to be just the same. He could not believe his childhood idol had the nerve to say those things to him when he used to be in a similar position. Having amassed enough data for analysis, he took his notebooks and left the stadium. At the bar. I wonder if Razer's back, he thought. She had been on a job for Sensei since his battle at the USJ and had yet to return. Kurogiri notified him that she had watched the fight via recording. He had also been told that she would keep her part of the bargain, much to his delight. Aside from martial arts, he had learned much from his master. Under her tutelage, he had become fluent in French and English, two languages he studied in school, and improved his computer skills by learning how to hack and use various programs. There were now words to describe how grateful he felt towards her. Upon reaching the bar, he was met with a disturbing sight. An armored assailant lay on top of Tamara, holding him down on the floor with a knife in his left shoulder, while holding another in his right. Razer and Kurogiri were just standing there silently observing the scene. Razer was no surprise, but Kurogiri, Izuku would have expected him to intervene, especially with Tamura's life in the balance. The assailant leapt back with a destroyed knife, probably from Tamura's quirk. However, he didn't seem to notice Izuku. Tamura complained about his wounds. Welcome back, Deku, Kurogiri greeted him. I trust your mission went well. Izuku nodded in confirmation. The assailant turned to face Izuku, having finally become aware of his presence. The assailant had bandanas covering his face, a red scarf, and wore a surprised yet intimidating expression. What the hell, Razer? He snarled. You kids joined this psycho group. He and Razer know each other, Izuku thought. He's my student, she replied simply. A runaway the League took in. I believe I told you about him, Stain. Stain examined Izuku from head to toe. Izuku felt like the man was judging him, and in a sense he was. One could only glean so much information about a person just by looking at them, and in Stain's case, he was getting a lot. Going by Razer's words and examining his body, he could tell he had been trained thoroughly, and presumably hellishly. However, his eyes told another story. There was something strong, determined, yet sad, and broken. He was not a fake like the rest of them, however. Of that, he was certain. By turning his attention to the man-child, Stain smirked. In spite of his opinion, the visit had not been a total waste. You? We are opposites, yet we seem to have the same goal. I have seen it in your eyes. They say those at death's door reveal their true colors. Even you have a creed you follow. Like me, you are working to destroy the current society, Stain acknowledged. Tamura glared hatefully at Stain. He didn't want this man here, or part of the League, despite what Sensei Kurogiri said. As much as he would have loved killing him then and there, he knew it was a stupid move with his current wounds. As much as he hated Stain and what he stood for, he placed some value on his life, and did not want to see it end here. Tamura, Kurogiri, he isn't going to join. Your ideals just don't mix. So let it go. Razer ordered. Something is wrong here, Izuku realized. Very wrong. Razer's behavior was legitimately scaring him. Normally she would have full-on attacked a guy like this, yet here she was being reasonable. Additionally, she was smiling, genuinely. Izuku couldn't ever remember her smiling except with sadism. Since you're here though, I have a favor to ask if you'll follow me. She asked politely. The villain grunted and followed her out of the bar. Okay, would someone tell me what the hell is going on? Izuku demanded as he took out one of his regeneration drugs. He always kept a few with him just in case. He then injected Tamura with it, causing the villain to heal quickly. Kurogiri quickly briefed him on the situation. Stain was the notorious hero killer who had been eliminating various heroes he came across. Due to his combat experience, they had hoped to recruit him for the league, but Stain took an instant disliking to Tamura, a mutual feeling they both shared, saying he's the type he despises most and tried to kill him. Tamura, still pissed about what Stain had said, stormed out to clear his head. While Izuku understood the situation, there was something still bothering him. "Kurajiri, what's up with Razer?" he asked. She was acting odd. By that I mean she wasn't being violent, wasn't swearing, and was smiling in a non-sadistic manner. "I'm afraid I can't answer. She has some sort of history with Stain, or so she says," he replied honestly. She didn't go into much detail. The conversation was interrupted by the two villains' return. "Well, now that that's settled, Deku, tonight you'll be going out with Stain, and then you'll be spending the entire week with him. This will be a sort of educational experience for you, as there are a few things you can learn from him," Razer explained. "Also, you could use a small break from the league." "Ha!" Izuku and Kurajiri shouted in unison. "But Razer, he started. "Don't worry, there will be no killing. Stain has agreed to put his crusade on hold for a week," she told him. No one said anything for a minute. "Razer, just what kind of relationship do you have with this guy that he would just agree to it? A few minutes ago, he was ready to kill Shigaraki," Kurajiri asked curiously. "Stain here's a friend of mine, something I have very few of," she replied nonchalantly. They couldn't believe what they just heard. Razer had friends, actual friends. There was barely anyone she could stand being around. You're both wondering how this is possible, right? Despite my personality, I am not without friends. Now Stain and I tried to kill each other many times in the past, but eventually came to respect each other's skill and became friends through fighting," she explained. "That's how she makes friends. Through death matches," Izuku and Kurajiri simultaneously thought. As much as they wanted to voice their surprise, deep down, they weren't. This was Razer after all. "I've already gotten permission from Sensei, so it's alright, Deku," she told him. "And just how did you get this permission?" Kurajiri interrogated with a slight edge to his voice. "I asked nicely," Razer replied calmly. After 6 hours of arguing and convincing, Kurajiri's eyes narrowed dangerously at Razer. He was amazed she would want Izuku to apprentice with Stain, considering what his training might entail or remind him of. After all, she had argued against him going to the USJ with Sensei. Why was now so different? Just like before, the tone of the room had shifted. It was not as tense as before, but still noticeable. Izuku wondered if Kurajiri was just worried because of what happened with Tamura. It would make sense, since hardly anyone would trust someone who stabbed a colleague of theirs with another. Izuku gazed at Stain, who gazed back, their eyes locking onto each other. "Don't worry, kid. Everything is as Razer put it," he grunted. "I'll see you tonight at around 8. Knowing he was in no position to refuse, Izuku nodded begrudgingly. "May I know what your quirk is first, though? If I'm going to work with you, I'd like to know what you can do." "Razer, you too, you promised you'd tell me everything," Izuku stated. "I will. However, you just reminded me of something," she said, walking over to him. Before he could react, Razer flipped and brought her foot down hard on his head. Izuku fell to the ground and just barely prevented his face from colliding with the ground. "During your fight, you turned your back on the enemy, in doing so you almost died. Make sure it won't happen again, you little shit," she scolded. "And she's back," Izuku deadpanned. "As for my quirk," she said while facing Izuku. Multiple blades of different sizes and shapes emerged from her body, not tearing her clothes. "I can manifest blades from any part of my body. One of which is sharp and strong enough to cut All Might," she explained. "Mine is Blood Curdle, which lets me paralyze my enemy by tasting their blood. It varies with blood type though," Stain piped in. "There, are you happy?" Razer stopped. Izuku was rambling like an insane person at an asylum. She, and even Stain, found it weird. "Deku, what the fuck are you doing?" she asked. "Oh, that's right, you've never seen Deku in his state," Kurajiri realized. "Whenever he sees a quirk, he starts thinking of its uses, weaknesses, and ways to improve it. Okay, when he snaps out of this, tell him to get some rest for tonight. And send Stain to where he needs to go," Razer told the mist villain before leaving. "Fine," Kurajiri relented. "But you and I shall be having a serious discussion about this later." Razer nodded as she turned to leave. She expected this reaction from Kurajiri, so later she would indulge him in some answers. For now, she had work to do. Kurajiri opened up a portal to Hosu, which Stain entered. With the time and place in mind, he began to make preparations for the upcoming week with Deku. By the time Izuku had finished, Razer and Stain were gone, and Kurajiri cleaning out some glasses with 2 cups of hot tea ready. It was going to be a long week. Izuku wasted no time in getting ready for tonight, and a week in general. His villain suit and mask had been repaired, so he would be able to go out without anyone recognizing him, which was a relief. However, he was still nervous. Following their encounter, he extensively researched Stain's career as the hero killer. He discovered he had killed at least 17 pro heroes, and his most recent attack, which was during the festival, was on Ingenium. The turbo hero was not dead. He had been found and taken to hospital, where he was currently in critical condition and undergoing treatment. What was strange, however, were the effects of Stain's murders, in which crime rates decreased. On a side note, he was angry that Razer was unavailable, again, to tell him about herself. Apparently, Sensei had sent her out on another job, or so Kurogiri said. Either that or she was purposely avoiding him, though he somehow doubted it. Razer did not seem like the type to run from her problems. Izuku packed his taser grappling hook, some knives, some ice grenades, made by him, and several doses of regeneration drug. Kurogiri provided some cash to last him the week in the phone. He didn't know what he would be up against this week, so it was best to be prepared. Well, it's nearly 8. I'd better go and see Kurogiri, he said to himself before exiting the room. Hosa City. So, you're here, the hero killer greeted him. Good, then we can get started. Before we do, I'd like to know exactly what we'll be doing, Izuku replied. If that's alright. Stain frowned. Well, to put it simply, I'll be going through knife skills and working on your senses and mobility. I will also be attempting to teach you how to channel your killing intent, Stain explained. Izuku was slightly surprised. Those were things that Razer could have taught him herself, so why would she want him to learn from this man? Maybe it really was just a way to give him a break from the league. However, he was curious about this killing intent. From the look in your eyes, I can tell you're wondering why Razer isn't going to teach you these things herself, Stain assumed. Izuku internally cursed. Why was he so easy to read? When she said this was an educational experience, it wasn't a joke. While you are with me, I shall be teaching you my way of life. The way I see the world, Stain told him. He then started jumping from wall to wall until he was at the top of a building. Follow me, he called out to Izuku. Seeing no reason to disobey, Izuku started to do the same thing, but used his grappling hook to bring him the rest of the way. As soon as he'd reached the top, Stain motioned him to come over and sit with him on the edge. Before we start, I think it would be best if we get to know each other a little first. So go on, tell me a bit about yourself, Stain told Izuku. Izuku hesitated for a moment. Then he decided that if he was going to work with this man, he was going to have to get along with him. I'm 15. I lived with my mother until I joined the league. My hobbies are quirk analysis, science and reading. My work for the league involves the first 2 hobbies. Also, I don't know if Razer told you, but I happen to be quirkless, Izuku told the hero killer. Stain didn't appear fazed by this. I'm 31. My parents died a long time ago. Up until about 3 years ago, I worked as a vigilante called Stendhal and eliminated criminals, until a certain incident changed all of that. My hobbies include martial arts, listening to music and sword collecting. And my primary goal is to rid society of the false heroes who plague and corrupt it, Stain explained. By the way, Razer did tell me you were quirkless, but I couldn't care less about that. The fact that you do not possess the quirk doesn't mean that you are weak. Izuku was slightly surprised at this. Most generally saw people like him as weak and worthless, though there were exceptions. However, something Stain had just said caught his attention. When you say false heroes, what do you mean? Izuku asked. Stain's face contorted into one of contempt. What I mean is everyone, except for All Might, who bears the title hero are not heroes at all. All they care about is fame and money and nothing else. Female heroes parade around like sluts to increase their popularity, and male heroes display their quirks, like they are the most impressive thing in the world, garnering attention. The only true hero in this society is All Might, who does not care about any of those things. As such, it is my duty to free this society of all its pretenders, and make it a place of true heroes, Stain preached. Thinking on what Stain just said, Izuku couldn't help but agree with him. Most of the heroes were as he said. In fact, it was the reason so many of his classmates, Kasuki included, wanted to become heroes. However, Izuku had mixed feelings about All Might. If your goal is to eliminate all false heroes, then why is Ingenium still alive? You don't seem like the sort of person that would leave things to chance, Izuku questioned. A vigilante by the name of the Crawler stopped me before I could. He told me that Ingenium was willing to help him master his quirk, and even offer him a place at his agency as a sidekick, despite not having a hero license. It was also from him I learned that Ingenium was more interested in saving people. It was the reason why he was interested in taking the man as a sidekick, Stain explained. Had I known any of this, I wouldn't have attacked him the way I did. Unfortunately, there isn't anything I can do about it now. Stain genuinely regretted crippling Ingenium. He should have investigated him more like the other heroes. He did not want a repeat of them. Izuku was stunned. Ingenium sounded like a noble hero compared to most of the others. If you are so hung up on heroes, then why didn't you ever try to become one? Izuku asked curiously. At one point, I did. When All Might debuted, I was deeply inspired, so I worked hard to become one. However, after I entered a hero school, I started to see how the world truly was. It disgusted me to no end, which led to my crusade today, Stain told him. Izuku was starting to see the similarities between him and Stain. He had been the same once until shit happened, and everything went to hell. I can relate. I used to look up to All Might, and at one point I wanted to be a hero as well. I wanted to do it because I wanted to help people with a smile as he did, Izuku replied. Stain's eyes widened. What changed? he asked curiously. Razer never told me about your past or why you joined the league. Stain really was intrigued by this boy. From the way he spoke about himself, Deku seemed like another version of All Might. Strangely enough, Stain could see a bit of himself in the boy. Someone who had dreams and aspirations, only to have them shattered by the deeds of others. Not really seeing a reason to keep it from him, Izuku decided to tell him. Since you're curious, I may as well tell you. It all started when I discovered I was quirkless, Izuku started. And so, he told him. How he had been bullied for not having a quirk. How he had so badly wanted to be a hero but was put down every time. His encounter with All Might, though he left out the details of his weakness. How he tried to commit suicide at Katsuki's suggestion, and why he joined the league. He even talked about his training with Razer and how he had gotten revenge on Katsuki. While he was listening, Stain could not help but feel sympathy for Deku. Being quirkless was not a crime, nor was wanting to be a hero. He didn't deserve to suffer for either. At the same time, he was also furious. Assaulting someone without power just to boost their own ego. Great, now I have another reason to hate this society, Stain thought. I swear some of these false heroes and those who would become heroes are even bigger villains than most of the villains I've encountered. He was slightly interested by the encounter with All Might. Despite what he said, Stain figured there must have been a specific reason All Might acted the way he did. The symbol of peace wasn't the type who looked down on others. Stain himself had nothing against quirkless people and didn't see why they couldn't become heroes. Sure, he relied on his quirk, but most of the time he needed to use hand-to-hand combat to defeat his enemies. Quirkless people could do the same. Society's view of them was outright pathetic. To make matters worse, they were openly discriminated against by not being allowed to attend most hero schools, and had a hard time finding employment due to the preference for quirks that were suited for the job. From Deku's description, it seemed that even in schools they were made a mockery of and excluded from activities. The reasons for becoming a villain are understandable. As for All Might, he may have had a specific reason for acting that way towards you. From everything I have seen of him, he is not the type of person to just look down on someone. He is a true hero who instills those with hope, not despair, Stain told the boy sitting next to him. Izuku pondered over what Stain had just said. All Might had been quirkless, maybe he had gone through something similar. That would explain why he seemed so hesitant when answering him. Regardless, he still viewed All Might as a hypocrite. It did not matter now though, he was a villain, and nothing would change that. Izuku leapt to his feet. Whatever the case, let's get started. This is a learning experience, or internship if you prefer, he said. Stain could not help but grin at the boy. He was enthusiastic he'd give him that. He leapt to his feet. Alright, first I'm going to teach you how to channel killing intent. This might sound like a bad thing, but it can be pretty damn useful, Stain started explaining. At the bar. It had been an hour since Deku had gone out with Stain. Razer was currently drinking some red wine served by Kurogiri. Tamura was still out trying to cool off after his encounter with Stain. Do you really think this is a good idea? Kurogiri questioned with a judging tone. Deku going out with Stain. Razer took a sip of her drink and spoke up. It will be a good experience for him, she replied. Good experience? Kurogiri repeated. Given the man's reputation, how do you know he won't? Because I asked him to. Razer snapped. This might come as a shock to Shisa, but I trust Stain. I trust him to look after Deku and hold up on my request, more than I do most people. If I didn't, then he wouldn't be out there. Kurogiri frowned at his surname being invoked. It meant Razer was serious about this. Why the sudden change of heart? He interrogated. When he wanted to go to the USJ, you argued with All for One for hours before finally giving in. So, why? When I watched the video, I saw he didn't get triggered once. No matter what that explosive fucker threw at him, he maintained level-headed the entire time, Razer explained. And that's when I thought, if he was fine during that, then he could handle a week with Stain. Kurogiri took a moment to consider this. Razer may have had a point about Izuku's stability, however, Bakugo was not the best example to show it. I doubt he would be seeing as how he put up with it for 10 years, he pointed out. He is accustomed to dealing with violence from that boy, among others. I doubt he would be triggered by it. But Stain, his way of life could end up with small flashbacks of. Okay. Razer yelled. I see your point. However, I stand by what I said. I know I was stupid to do what I did 4 months ago, but with Shizum I'm certain. He won't kill anyone, he won't let Izuku fall to any harm, and he won't cause him to remember. I spoke with All for One before this, and he reapplied the process. So, we don't have to worry about him remembering anything, not yet at least. Kurogiri was, albeit only a little, relieved to hear that information. That meant they were safe for the time being. It seemed Razer was taking extra precautions with Izuku, not that he blamed her. Despite her attitude, she genuinely cared about Izuku. Kurogiri, what do you think of Izuku? Razer asked him in an attempt to change the subject. The Black Mist villain was caught off guard by the question. I think he's intelligent, loyal, courageous, kind, but also sad. He's passionate about what he does and is not afraid to speak his opinion, he responded. He looks out for us like family, and we do the same for him. Personally, I think he's the nicest member we've had so far. Yes, he is a nice person, Razer said. And he doesn't belong with the league. Now Kurogiri was surprised. It seemed that she was showing was the closest to her soft side. Is this because of what you saw in the video? He asked. Or maybe a few months ago. Both, she responded. She and Kurogiri watched the video of Izuku's battle with that explosive little bastard. She watched with pride as her student stood his ground and fought using everything she had taught him. However, when it came to the part where he saved that girl, Razer saw that despite how much he had changed with the league, deep down he was still a good person. He still possessed morality, much like he had shown a few months ago. Not that she cared, she had a certain degree of morality too, a certain line she would not cross. You know, part of me thinks he would be better off as a hero, Razer told him. He'd be one of the few that are actually in it to help people, rather than the usual bullshit reasons. Kurogiri said nothing. He knew this wasn't the place to be saying those things, yet part of him wanted to agree with her. At one point in his life, he had wanted to become a hero like most. However, that event happened, and he became a villain. I can understand where you're coming from. However, at the same time, it is impossible. Society would never accept someone like him as one of them. I know from experience, he explained to her. And given everything else that has happened, I don't believe it would be a good idea. Razer remained silent. It was just a thought. Thanks for the drink, she said before walking off. She had purposely avoided Izuku so that he could prepare for his week with Stain. She would keep her promise though. She thought a bit more about the type of person Izuku was and who he had been. An idiot that was more interested in helping others than himself. Razer sighed as it made her think of another person she knew all too well. He's just like he used to be, Toshinori. Why couldn't you have seen that? At an unknown location. Haha, so that brat Tamura is planning on taking some Nomu to Hosu's city, the voice said. Yes, Viper confirmed. He has become jealous of the hero killer and seeks to remove his name from the news. To achieve that he intends to create chaos using these creatures. The voice giggled. And just how many is All for One giving him? Asked the voice. 3, Viper informed. Perfect. 3 is rather small, so give him that one as well. This will be the perfect opportunity to do it. Accidents do happen after all, the voice replied sinisterly. Viper shifted uncomfortably. This man was one of few that could scare her. Sir, is this really necessary? Viper asked carefully. He has contributed so much to the league and has even perfected the enhancement drug as well as others. Is it really necessary to kill him? As soon as she had said that, Viper felt a sharp pain in her head and dropped to her knees. Gasping for air, she stared up at the screen. Have you already forgotten who you serve, Viper, or do I have to remind you? Why are you even questioning my orders anyway? The voice demanded. No, I have not. However, All for One has grown rather fond of him. I just want to avoid starting an all-out war over the death of something you despise, she explained. It was the best explanation she could give, rather the only one he would accept. Personally, she had nothing against Deku. When she had hacked his school system, it was one of her side jobs for the league. She had been impressed with his intelligence, even more so when she saw his quirk analysis abilities. Working alongside him as S1 had moved some of the league's projects faster. Honestly, she found it hard to believe his school had treated him like dirt when he was this gifted. Don't worry about him. As long as you complete that, it should be no problem. Besides, with what I've got planned, well, even he won't expect it, the voice laughed. Anyways, you've set the Nomu the way I wanted it, right? Of course. When it is deployed, it will seek out and eliminate its target. In this case, Deku, Viper explained. Good. And Viper, because you want to avoid suspicion so much, you can have it kill that quirkless shit quickly. Pretty nice of me, don't you think? The voice said with glee. Viper nodded. Compared to what he usually did to quirkless people, a quick death was rather nice. Nothing more was said between the pair, so she logged off to continue her work. The man who had been talking to her walked over to the sink to wash his face. When he stared in the mirror, he saw a man with a muscular build like All Might. Short hair, shaved around the sides, and eyes as red as blood. Dressed in a crimson armored suit, he grinned with malice. All for one, your day is coming. The same can be said for all those brats who work for you. And as for that quirkless filth you brought to the league, well, his death will be the first stepping stone to achieving my goal. One more atrocity to add to my list. With that, atrocity walked out. Hosu City. You've definitely gotten the hang of all this, Stain applauded. It had only been 5 days since he and Deku's internship began, but things were progressing quickly. In a short span of time, Deku had learned to focus his senses, so they would be even sharper than before, and mastered the knife skills he was taught. As for killing intent, that had been a little harder to work with as he had no desire to kill. To help, Stain told him to think about the one that made him suffer so much and what he wanted to do to him. He told him to channel his anger and rage, to attribute it as some form of bloodlust. It took a while, but he was finally able to produce some form of it, though not very powerful. Still, it was better than nothing. To add to it all, his mobility and balance had increased drastically from climbing and parkouring across various buildings. "You've done enough for today, so take a break," Stain told him. "You sure?" Stain nodded. The conversation was cut short, however, by an assailant's face kicking Stain at high speed. He was wearing All Might-themed clothes, mainly a hoodie, a black mask to cover his face, gloves and goggles. Stain staggered slightly but regained his balance and readied his sword until he saw who it was. "Managing to land a hit on me, you've gotten stronger," Stain complimented the assailant. "Still though, I never expected to see you here. Shouldn't you be out with Knuckledister and Popstep patrolling your own area?" "Don't try and flatter me," the man snarled. "I was just passing by. As for my friends, they can handle things just fine without me." Izuku had no idea what was going on. Stain clearly knew this man, yet he didn't seem annoyed by the assault. Furthermore, he was not irritated by his appearance, which meant he couldn't have been one of the false heroes Stain hated. As Izuku inspected him further, he noticed how he was crouched down in a crawling position. Given this information, Izuku guessed that this must be that vigilante Stain told him about. Excuse me," he started attracting the man's attention. "Would you be the crawler by any chance?" Suddenly the man moved toward him with such speed and grabbed his hands. It looked as though he were about to cry tears of joy. "You're absolutely right," he said with joy. "Finally, someone gets my name right." Izuku looked at Stain, who simply shrugged. Crawler changed to a serious expression. "Wait, hold on. If you're with him, is he trying to kill you?" he asked. "No, I'm sort of on an internship with him for the week, learning new fighting skills and how the world works," Izuku explained a little sheepishly. Crawler was stunned, but that quickly turned into anger. "What the hell, Stain?" he yelled. "I thought you said you didn't involve children in your so-called war." The hero killer sighed. "I'm doing this as a favor to a friend of mine. I'm not involving him or anything, I'm just teaching some new things, one of which isn't how to kill. I even put my crusade on hold because I was asked to." What he didn't mention was that Razer had made him swear not to kill anyone while he was out with Deku. It seemed that of all the things he was, she did not want him to become an accomplice to murder. He understood. Once you crossed that line, there was no going back, ever. "Wait, so is he a vigilante then? Someone training to be a hero wouldn't work with you?" Crawler said suspiciously. "No, he's a villain. Not your usual one though, he is mainly an analysis and support one. Kid's actually a member of the League," Stain explained. "Though let me tell you now, he is one of the nicer members." Crawler slowly digested the information. He had heard of the League even before the attack on UA. One of the perks of being a vigilante meant you heard about things heroes normally would not. Also, he knew Stain well enough to know that he wouldn't just work with villains, the man absolutely despised them. However, if he did have a friend for who he was willing to do this for, then it was possible. "So, wait, does that mean you don't kill?" Crawler asked Izuku. He just wanted to be sure. The boy in black nodded in response. With this, he relaxed. However, he moved towards Stain and punched across the face. Izuku was surprised that Stain was just letting this happen. He could have easily dodged. "I'm guessing this is about Ingenium," he mentioned. "You're damn well right. The guy's never gonna be able to walk again thanks to you. His life as a hero is over," Crawler yelled. "You put a good man out of commission. He wasn't even one of those false heroes you hate so much, he was genuine." There were tears in his eyes now. Izuku felt bad for the man. He remembered how Stain had described Ingenium, rather the Crawler's description. Izuku could tell he looked up to the man a lot. It was the same way he had looked at All Might. Stain wore the same stoic expression. He was about to speak when they all heard an explosion in the distance. Stain immediately started climbing towards the roof. Crawler was about to protest when Izuku grabbed him and used his grappling hook to hoist them both to the roof. Climbing up, Izuku could see fire coming from another part of the city. A figure flew out from the smoke when Izuku recognized. "Nomu," he whispered. The other two turned to him. "You know that thing?" Crawler inquired. It was a weapon the League created that was supposed to defeat All Might. But some things are not right. That one was defeated. Also, it didn't have wings or gray skin, Izuku explained. "This one must be brand new." "I bet it's that brat from before," Stain snarled. I should have just killed him when I had the chance." Izuku knew he meant to murder. Given the man's personality, Izuku wouldn't put it past him to do something like this. "Maybe we should all get off the roof first so we can work out our next move," Crawler suggested. Stain leapt to the alley below. Izuku grabbed Crawler and used his grappling hook to bring them both down. Stain ordered them both to wait while he checked things out. "So, if you know what that thing is, do you know how to defeat it?" Crawler asked. "No, sorry. The first time I even saw Nomu was during the USJ incident, and even then, I didn't know about any of his powers. I was only there to get revenge on someone," Izuku told him. The Crawler's eyes narrowed at this. "Revenge?" he questioned. "The person I fought against, and won, was my childhood bully. He used to beat the crap out of me every day for being quirkless, until that one incident when I finally put him in his place," Izuku said with a bit of pride. "What about you though?" Stain said. "You were a vigilante." "Well yeah. I work with 2 others to keep my area safe from threats most heroes and police wouldn't see or deal with. We're considered villains, but technically we're heroes, Crawler replied. For a moment they said nothing. You don't seem like a bad person. Just how did you end up becoming a villain? He asked. Izuku hesitated for a moment. This man was a stranger whom he had just met. He didn't have any reason to tell him. Oh, I'm sorry, Crawler apologized after noticing Izuku's discomfort. I guess that was a bit insensitive. We just met, and why would you tell a guy you just met your life story? Don't forget you kicked my mentor in the face, Izuku reminded him. And punched him for good measure. Crawler chuckled. Fair point. Question just came out of nowhere. Forget I said anything. Beneath his mask, Izuku pursed his lips. Crawler was not pushing him for answers. Much to his relief, however, there was a part of Izuku that wanted him to know. He really didn't have a reason to tell him the whole story, but maybe he could just give a general outline. I told you I was bullied for being quirkless. When I was pushed to a certain point where I could no longer take it and tried to end it all. The League saved me and took me in, Izuku told him. They saw something in me no one else ever had, and filled me with hope and reason to live again. Crawler said nothing. He knew quirkless people did not have an easy life in society. His colleague and master Knuckledister was quirkless, but that never stopped him. He always fought any villains that came his way and even defeated Stain once. Strangely enough, Koichi had never once asked the older man about his daily life, since there had never been much reason to. What's your name? He asked the villain. You don't have to tell me your real one. I'd just like something to call you. It's Deku, Izuku replied. By the way, does it seem weird that we're just having a casual conversation while a crisis is going on? Probably, but fortunately, there's no one here to judge us, Crawler said. They both laughed, which ceased as soon as they heard yelling a few feet away. They immediately ran to the source only to find Stain standing over a defeated teenager wearing an Ingenium-like costume. Stain's sword was covered in blood. Izuku inspected the teenager's face, who was glaring hatefully at Stain. He recognized him as Tenyu Iida from Class 1A. He was a splendid hero who gave me a dream. Tenyu yelled at Stain, who returned with a glare. Izuku and Koichi were confused as to what was going on. Why was Tenyu here? Was he looking for Stain? I'll kill you, he roared. The pair froze at Tenyu's words. He had come here to kill Stain. Becoming consumed by vengeance for the sake of satisfying your own selfish desires. That is the furthest act from being a hero, Stain scolded. Not able to stand this any longer, Koichi spoke up. Stain, what the hell is going on? He's just a kid, he asked. Tenyu looked up to see the new arrivals. One was dressed up kinda like All Might, the other dressed in black. There was something familiar about him though. He attacked me, what was I supposed to do? Just let him kill me? Stain retorted. He came after me with the full intent of attaining revenge for my assault on his brother, Ingenium. Ingenium, Crawler responded, surprised. You're Tensei's little brother. Tenyu, along with Izuku, were surprised. Stain made no change in expression. You know my brother. Tenyu stammered. Koichi nodded. Yeah, I do. He's a good man and an amazing hero. He helped me master my quirk even though I didn't have a hero license. He gazed down at Tenyu with a solemn expression. I truly am sorry about what happened to him. Tenyu didn't speak. Izuku was going over all this in his head. If Crawler knew Ingenium's identity, then they were obviously closer than he thought. You should be grateful, Stain piped up. Crawler here stopped me when I was about to kill your brother, and gave me the same rand you were giving me. The only difference was that I actually let him hit me. Well, the second time. Tenyu glared at Stain again. Stain, would you please leave? I'd like to talk with him. Deku, you can stay. I need you to help me treat his wounds, Koichi said. Stain nodded and informed them he would just be in the next alley. Crawler placed Tenyu sitting up and motioned for Izuku to come closer to help. He then took out a first aid kit in his pocket. Is it just your right arm he got? Izuku asked. Tenyu nodded as a reply, which was all he needed to hear. He took out one of his regeneration drugs and injected it into his arm, causing him to yelp in pain. Relax, it'll go away in a minute. That'll be faster than treating you, Izuku assured him. True to his word, the wound cleared up as though it had never happened, much to the shock of the other two. Well, now that that's taken care of, we can talk, Koichi said as he sat across from the boy. Tenyu, he started. You complete idiot. Are you trying to get yourself killed? The two boys were taken back, however, Crawler wasn't done. I understand you're upset about your brother, but what the hell? Stain has killed multiple pro heroes all by himself, and you thought you could beat him alone. What would Tensei say if he could see you now? He scolded. Hearing this only angered Tenyu further. I inherited my brother's name. I'm the one who has to do it, he angrily retorted. So don't you dare tell me I shouldn't. If you did save my brother, then you should know the condition he is in, you should understand. I do understand. However, Tensei happens to be my best friend, so I know about the type of person he is. Believe when I say he wouldn't want you to get revenge, Crawler told him. He loves you more than anything, and one thing he truly wishes for is for you to become a hero. Can you even imagine the state he would be in? You just died or killed someone yourself? Are you that selfish? Tenya looked away. Izuku couldn't tell if he was ashamed of his actions or not, but he decided it was finally time to speak up. I don't know anything about Ingenium, but if he is anything like Crawler described, then I doubt he would want this, he said. Tenya turned to look at him. I know you want to be a hero like your brother, but this isn't the right way. Murder is hardly a heroic act, no matter how much one might deserve it. If you did manage to kill Stain, which I seriously doubt is possible, what do you think would happen? Do you think you would be praised? No, you would be considered a villain and thrown in prison. So let me tell you now, stop before you can't. It won't end well for you if you don't. Izuku was not sure where his words were coming from because they felt so natural. He had never been fond of killing by anyone, hero or villain. Through some miraculous means, Izuku's words resonated with Tenya. Tears were beginning to form. Izuku saw a variety of emotions in his face. Shame, regret, anger, and sadness. Crawler pulled him into a hug. It's alright. You don't have to hold it in, Koichi assured the boy. With that, Tenya began to cry hysterically. They were right. He knew they were right. What kind of person was he? To suddenly decide on something this severe. He wasn't a hero, he was a fraud. He had no right to call himself Ingenium. Brother, I'm sorry, he whispered while still crying. No one said anything. Izuku and Koichi acknowledged that Tenya had a lot going on and needed to sort it out himself. After a few minutes, Tenya stopped crying and stood up and faced the two. Thank you and I'm sorry, he said. You've got nothing to apologize for, Koichi told him. No, you were right. I shouldn't have acted the way I did, it was foolish of me, he admitted, and then turned to Deku. Thank you also. And, out of curiosity, were you involved in the USJ incident? It's just that you look familiar, and I haven't encountered that many villains. Izuku nodded. Koichi tensed slightly at this, fearing how Tenya would react. Surprisingly, Tenya grinned. So, you were the one who defeated Bakugo, he realized. How do you know about that? He asked curiously. He seriously doubted Katsuki would brag about a loss to anyone. I heard a report about it. Also, he was swearing, when I find that bastard in black, I'm gonna kill him. He really hates you, Tenya explained. If only you knew, Izuku thought sarcastically. The conversation came to an abrupt end when something large came crashing into the ground near to them, generating a loud impact. It was the winged Nomu from before. This thing, Tenya recognized. What's it doing here? I thought the police had captured it. The Nomu was staring intently at Izuku. Recognizing its target, it moved with great speed and swung its arm at him. Izuku barely dodged as the creature destroyed the wall behind him. He had Stain and Razer's training to thank for that. Nomu moved to attack him again, only this time he was pushed out of the way by Crawler using his quirk, a mobility one that required him to be on all fours. Why is it attacking me? Izuku wondered. Aren't we on the same side? Izuku figured it must be on the enhancement drug. However, from the damage it was doing, it was not as powerful as the first one. It moved to attack him again, only to have its leg chopped off by a familiar katana. Stain stood next to Izuku ready to strike again while the leg quickly regenerated. You okay, Deku? He asked, concerned. Yeah. Although, that thing is trying to kill me for some reason, Deku replied. Well then, we had better finish it now. All of you get ready, that includes you, Ingenium, Stain exclaimed. Tenya glared at him. Just once I'll do this, after that we're back to being enemies, he explained. Working with Stain was the last thing he wanted right now. However, he also knew just how dangerous Nomu was. His teacher wrapped in bandages and his classmates' descriptions were enough reason to be worried. If he hoped to live to see another day to rectify his mistakes, he would need to cooperate with him. Luckily, he would not be alone in this endeavor. If he is using the drug, then it should wear off in 10 minutes. It has been at least 20 since this all started, Izuku thought. Standing beside each other, the vigilantes, the student, and the villain began their fight against the monster before them. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.